poet Mary Oliver once wrote, "To live in this world, we must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against our bones as if our life depended on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go, to let him go." We are here on this early October afternoon to lift up the name of Richard William Wolk. We are here to place his life in our enduring memories and to celebrate with warmth and affection his days among us. We gather here with sorrow in our hearts, and we gather in thankfulness. We come in grief because one whom we love and who has loved us is no more among us, gone now from our midst. But we gather also in gratitude, in praise, in tribute to his long life well lived. And so we sit together confronting the fact that life ends. Sometimes like Dick's after a long, loving life, and sometimes, as the Wolk family knows, far too soon. This is the condition of our birth, that at the end of the road, near or far, stands always our death. All generations have had to bear this heavy truth. But Dick's family was clear and adamant that on this day, today, there must be a great celebration of his life. We are taking joy in Dick's life journey, and that is why we're gathered here. And so this is our time to remember. This is a time to tell stories and to laugh. As you know, Dick would laugh if he were here. This is also a time to cry, to feel our all too real grief. This is a time to say goodbye. This is our time to remember the inquisitive, dedicated, deliberate, healing, thought-filled, philosophical, and fun-loving life that was Richard William Wolk. And so I invite Dick and Pat's youngest grandchild, Ellen, to light a candle in celebration of her grandfather's life. And in the light of that candle, let us rise in body or spirit and join in our opening song, "Peace Like a River." The words are in your order of service.
I've got peace like a river. Lessons from the Garden, written May 1980 by my grandfather. On a fresh, still May morning, I stood on the dewy grass and leaned on my backyard fence, witnessing the awakening of a new day. I soon noticed that I was not alone, for not more than 8 feet away from me, a blue jay had quietly lit upon a tender branch of young eucalyptus tree. "Good morning," I said. "How nice of you to be with me on such a lovely morning." I continued. The jay cocked her head and cautiously hopped closer. She did not appear afraid and seemed to want my presence, and I appreciated hers. One life curiously being attracted to another. We were together in this often impersonal, big world, and we valued each other's being there. I had done nothing to coax her or to solicit her coming closer. I was just present, open, and sensitive to the blessings of the morning. I have frequently returned to that spot, and almost invariably my friend is there if I'm not too distracted to look for her, and she still wants to come close. What a wonderful feeling to be accepted by a creature so free.
remembering a life. Richard Wolk was born into this world 86 years and 2 days ago, on September 30th, 1930. He was born just 11 months after the start of the Great Depression. The world that Dick encountered was markedly different from the world of his elder years. Think of it. In 1930, Herbert Hoover was 1.5 years into his term as president. Frozen food was sold commercially for the first time. New York City installed their first electric traffic lights. The Nazis became the second largest party in Germany, with Hitler promising to tear up the Treaty of Versailles if elected. Impacting forever the career Dick would eventually practice, Karl Landsteiner was honored in Dick's natal year with the Nobel Prize in Medicine for identifying AB positive, and O blood types. Songs Dick's mom and dad heard on the radio, and which Dick would eventually play on the piano for Pat years later in his evening concert, included the brand new hits Embraceable You, I Got Rhythm, Ain't Misbehavin', and On the Sunny Side of the Street. The Wolk family themselves lived on the sunny side of the street. A plenitude of photographs from his childhood reveal a comfortable lifestyle in Oak Park, Illinois, one little impacted by the Great Depression. Dick was the youngest of 3 children born to Ella and Charles Wolk, who ran a successful photography studio. Charles handled the camera, Ella handled the business end of things. She did the tinting and baked sweets for many Italian weddings that they photographed. Dick had 4 loving grandparents who were immigrants from Germany. As part of the Chicago German community, Grandpa was a shoemaker and his wife Frederica a dressmaker. His grandma and Grandpa Jasmine were butchers and ran an old-time sawdust on the floor butcher shop, wearing the gartered sleeves and straw-boat hats. Dick was sickly as a child, having first suffered pneumonia when he was 3 years old. His childhood was filled with beloved dogs, playing games with his mom, trips to the zoo, a passion he carried into his adulthood and shared with his daughters, music lessons on piano and accordion, and weekends spent sitting all day in the darkened movie theater watching the great movie stars of the 40s. He learned his love for being on the water from childhood summers spent at Petite Lake in northern Illinois, swimming, catching turtles and frogs, and of course, sailing. Sailing was in Dick's blood from the very beginning. Dick's mom adored him, but his father favored his older brother, he felt. Realizing he couldn't compete with his brother for his father's love, he decided to compete through education, and thus began a lifelong embrace and devotion to learning. He was an excellent student in high school and met lifelong best buddies while running track, something Dick was not so fond of because, as he liked to say, every time the gun went off, I wet myself. Dick graduated second in his class from Riverside Brookfield High School in 1948 and headed off to DePaul University in Indiana. Dick loved English, the humanities, and chemistry, but changed his major to pre-med his junior year so he would not have to go overseas to fight in the Korean War and kill people. Even as a young man, Dick was very peaceful, rational, and philosophical, and he knew human life mattered. He graduated from the University of Illinois College of Medicine in 1956 and headed to the West Coast to begin an internship at Southern Pacific General Hospital in San Francisco. And that was a good choice. because that city by the bay was where Dick first met and began dating a beautiful and feisty young woman named Patty Allen, who we know now as Pat. Pat's friend Barbara was an occupational therapist at the same hospital where Dick worked, and Barbara asked Pat, how would you like to meet a nice young doctor? What do you think Pat said? Barbara started to tell Pat about one young man, then corrected herself, saying he wouldn't be loyal. You need to meet Richard Wolk. He plays the piano, is friendly, and would be loyal. How true Barbara was. For their first date, Pat fixed Dick a meatloaf supper. He was impressed. Their second date was revelatory for them both. They were supposed to double date with another couple, but when they arrived at the house where they were supposed to meet up, the other couple was not there. Dick took it in stride, and Dick and Pat sat on the porch swing and talked and talked and talked into the night. Listening to the way he talked about things, Pat realized that Dick was kind and decent. And the fact that he wasn't angry at the other couple for standing them up showed that he was not reactive or argumentative. He seemed gentle. Pat and Dick continued to date, but eventually Dick proved to be too conservative and somewhat narrow in his thinking about some things than Pat, who had been raised in a, how shall we say, far left-leaning home. Pat ended the relationship. Once his internship was finished, Dick went into the Navy as a medical officer in attack transport and was stationed in Japan. While there, he fell in love with a young Japanese woman and visited her village, and as the only white person there, found out what it was like to be a racial minority. That experience of suddenly being on the outside opened Dick's eyes and allowed him to understand for the first time Pat's inclusiveness and respect for diverse people. Being an outsider profoundly changed him. During his time overseas, Dick continued to be in contact with Pat through letters. Over time, his signature, as ever Dick, transformed into Love Dick, and Pat knew that something was up. He then wrote saying that his ship was coming into port stateside in Tacoma, Washington, and would she like to meet him? Pat said yes and picked him up in a Pontiac convertible. They went out to Trader Vic's for a rum drink. As they talked, Pat realized Dick had been profoundly changed by his time overseas. Pat took him home, and he met her folks. They went out for pizza, parked under the viaduct, and Dick produced a string of pearls and said, "Would you marry me?" Pat remembers saying he did everything right. He went and asked my father if he would allow his daughter to marry him. Dick and Pat's dad were in the front room talking, while Pat hid in the bathroom, standing on top of the toilet, trying to listen to the conversation through the small window above the bathroom door. Her dad approved. After a whiskey toast, Dick was back to the ship and back out to sea. In a few minutes, Pat will tell you about the carefree, fun-filled early days of their marriage, filled with music, dance, wine, and good food. After the Navy, Dick entered a family practice residency in Martinez, California. When he finished that in 1959, Dick and Pat searched California for the right place to set up practice. They knew that they wanted a place with gentle weather and natural beauty and saltwater. They settled in Point Reyes Station. It was a demanding practice where Dick covered a 17-mile radius, making house calls and visiting 3 separate hospitals daily. But he loved it. He was so young-looking that patients often asked him to look at their pets first, just to make sure that he was a real doctor. His first love in family practice was delivering babies. His fees were reasonable, $75 for delivery only, $150 for prenatal, delivery, and postnatal care. Soon after setting up the practice, Dick became a father. Brian was born in 1960, Abby followed in 1963, and Amy in 1966. This family forged many happy memories. Walks with Brian and the dog before the other kids came along, reading from the encyclopedia every night. Dick was passing on his love of learning to his kids. Trips to the national parks, sailing with Amy, fishing and panning for gold with Brian, Dick taking Abby's scribbles and turning them into a cartoon, skiing at Lake Tahoe, and of course, trips to the zoo, which Dick would continue to till soon before his death. And then the Wolk's family life was changed forever. In 1969, at age 9, Brian was diagnosed with leukemia. Amy will share fully Dick's fight to save his son's life and his simultaneous crusade to get more government funding for career research later in today's celebration. From drawing Brian's blood work and taking it to the hospital each morning to testify before Congress, it is not an exaggeration to say Brian's illness and eventual death in 1973 forever altered Dick's relationship with medicine, propelled him to the forefront of oncology in the nation, and reshaped the internal dynamics of the Wolk family. It's also no exaggeration to say that Dick's ability to change himself as circumstances impacted him was one of his strongest qualities. His time in the Navy and in Japan opened his heart and mind to issues of diversity. Pat's involvement with the women's movement forced him to wrestle with this nation's long-held patriarchal notions. Again, he changed. He heard Dr. Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech and had an aha moment. Again, he changed. Over time, his politics shifted from Republican to Democrat. Again, he changed. Pat had something to do with that, too. Pat said that as Dick experienced more and more of life, he grew up, grew stronger, grew more and more compassionate, and more wonderfully human and humane. He was never happier than when helping others. As an oncologist, Dick became increasingly patient-centered, not institution-centered, while also researching with unwavering focus, always searching for the cures that eluded him as he treated Brian. He didn't want anyone else to have to go through what his dear son and his family experienced. After Brian's death, Dick began to mentor young men, sharing with them all the things he wanted to share with his son. We'll hear from two of those men later in our celebration. The Wolk family also opened their homes and hearts to so many exchange students from all over the world: Japan, Italy, Sweden, Finland, and so many other countries. Here was a family growing and learning and changing together. In the midst of so much change, there were some things about Dick that remained the same. What didn't change was Dick's passion for music. After his retirement in 2000, Dick was able to devote hours to his composing, often pounding away at the piano at 2 a.m. in the morning until Pat threatened divorce if he didn't get an electric keyboard and headphones. Dick leaves behind 500 pieces of music he composed, one of which we've already heard played so beautifully, and another which we'll hear later in today's celebration. And as so many of you know, he also loved listening to others make music. What also didn't change was the freedom, relaxation, and control he felt sailing, including on the boat the family purchased after Brian's death. A boat Brian asked the family to buy because he wanted to be sure his family had fun after he was gone. What didn't change was Dick's amazing capacity and devotion to thinking. He was a researcher and a problem solver. He was a writer with a love of the language he used to express the musings of his mind. He was the rational Apollonian to Pat's Dionysian. But still, Dick would write, "I believe in the power of prayer to heal because I have witnessed its miraculous healing power in the course of my practice." What also didn't change over the years was his love of dogs. Remember Heine, and Tomoki, and Tasha, and Mickey Finn, and Willie Finn, and Toby? What didn't change was his green thumb. Just look at Dick and Pat's backyard for confirmation of that. Dick planted and nurtured almost every tree and plant in that lush landscape. What didn't change was his sense of humor, his love of travel, and his celebration of food. Pat says, "I loved him for who he was and his commitment to a higher purpose. I realize how tough it must have been for him to be confronted every day with life and death issues. It required all of his spare time and energy. But no matter how busy, he took time to share his music, his love of sailing, and to show our exchange students and us the natural treasures of our state: Yosemite, Kings Canyon, Point Lobos, Carmel, Big Sur, Patrick's Point. Once he went to work for Kaiser. He had vacation time, and that's when we began to travel," remembers Pat, "and we got to get out of ourselves. Kaiser freed him up to be the healer, not the boss, not the businessman, not the sender of bills and insurance forms, and gave him a month's vacation time." Pat says, "We thanked Kaiser every day. And then, when he was ill, he was treated like royalty." The staff's respect for Dick was obvious by the time the doctors took with him, by the care the nurses provided in Dick's final hours, and in the heartfelt hugs given to Pat in the hospital room by staff members right after Dick passed. It's been said that the measure of a person is the amount of change they can accommodate, the unwavering passions that are never lost, and the compassion and decency they share with others. Held to those critical standards, which he himself would appreciate, there is no question that Dick was a life well lived.
you recognize that song? If they asked me, I could write a book. We used to dance to that, and I could write a preface on how we met. I could write a book, I think. We were young and single in San Francisco in 1956. As an intern, he earned $125 a month. But oh, what we could do on that $125. On weekends, we would purchase Dungeness crab at a fisherman's wharf and a loaf of sourdough French bread and take off in his 56 Ford for the Napa and Sonoma vineyards for wine tasting. Oh, we were daring and thought ourselves such connoisseurs of fine wines. We could have a complete meal at the Basque Hotel d'Espagne on Columbus Avenue in North Beach for $1.79, including wine. If we wanted to go upscale, we could cross Columbus Street to the Basque Hotel de France for an even more elegant meal, including vol au vent for $1 more. We danced at the William Tell Hotel to the music of Joe Schmiel and his accordion. One beer a night would see us through the evening full of dance music. Dick could dance a lively polka and schottisch, but he was best as a waltz partner. After we married, we continued to dance to Joe's music at Little Switzerland in Sonoma and the Pleasanton Oktoberfest, bringing our children along as they grew. Dick danced in his lederhosen with his daughters in their dirndls, carrying them in his arms until they could dance and follow on their own 2 feet. They're both good waltzers. He loved the German oompa and dance music he grew up with in Chicago. He grew up in a house full of music. A grandfather played the zither. We still have the zither in the closet, if anyone knows how to play a zither. His mother played the piano, his father the violin. Dick took to music like a duck to water, piano, organ, and guitar. His favorite piano teacher, Mr. Novak, supplemented his income, playing the latest music hits in the window of Sherman and Clay. You remember Sherman? The music store in Chicago. Dick could read music, but also pick out a tune by ear. Each evening, he would play me a concert, old tunes, new tunes, his latest composition, as I went about my work. Before he lost his voice, he loved to sing and could be the life of the party with his version of Ik ben een muzikanter uit Australië and Mijn hoed der gaat draaien, draaien had mijn hoed. His music tastes were varied and eclectic. As one of our first dates, he took me to hear Errol Garner at the Black Hawk at Oak and Turk in San Francisco. We sat in the front row and listened to Garner's low growl accompanying his music, looking around to see who was making the obnoxious noise. Unaware it was Garner himself. But Ella and Louie were his all-time favorites. His collection of CDs included numerous Fitzgerald and Armstrong recordings, as well as Errol Garner and Dave Brubeck. And he learned to appreciate Tony Bennett the older he and Tony Bennett got. He loved the holidays, never forgot a birthday, never a Halloween went by without his carving a pumpkin. Christmas, Thanksgiving, and Easter dinners were special, and presentation was essential. He remembered his grandma Jasmine serving him eggs sunny side up, surrounded by sliced strawberries, heart-shaped strawberries around the eggs. In strawberry season, he did the same for us. At Christmas, it was a goose with the Genza smulch. That's goose grease. A byproduct saved for the winter's chest colds. Our first Christmas together, his mom sent a care package, which included goose grease and salsa, which is head cheese. My Irish taste buds said, eh, but I learned to appreciate and even make salsa, but the goose grease was a bit much. He loved the adventure of travel instilled by his parents, and later, between university and med school, he became a tour conductor for Happiness Tours. He never tired of travel, researching each destination well in advance. He was adventurous with his taste buds as well, willing to try the local specialties, no matter how strange. In Bergamo, he ordered uccelletti, little birds. I think they were sparrows. They arrived barbecued on a stick with their little feet and their little beaks up in the air. He ate them. They were crunchy. I had pizza. His sailboat, the Brian Olin, was his second home. It was moored at Lake Millerton, so he could get away and get aboard in short time and out on the water. He was happiest on the water and loved to share his passion for sailing with friends and the many exchange students we had from around the world. He loved the holidays. I already said that. How do you like that one? He had a gentle sense of humor and was great with puns. And he loved a good joke to hear and to share. He could remember the punchlines. I couldn't. He could keep telling me the same joke over and over again. During the computer age, we sent jokes back and forth by email. He had a quiet laugh, not the loud laugh that Abby and I have. But you knew when he was amused. He maintained his sense of humor to the end. If you noticed, by the pictures outside, his mouth had a little natural upturn. So even when he was serious, he never looked mean. I will miss his evening concerts. Sometimes he would sit at the piano with a fake book and go through the alphabet playing the music we loved. One night as I listened from the computer room, he played Through the W's. What'll I do? When I fall in love? When I take my sugar to tea? When I'm not near the girl I love? When you wish upon a star? You get the idea. It was wonderful. It's wonderful. It's marvelous.
Along with me, the words are in your orders.
In January 1969, my brother Brian was diagnosed with leukemia. He was 8 years old. Without treatment, he would live 6 weeks. With treatment, 6 months, maybe 2 years. Mom and Dad started him on cancer-fighting agents that would limit his symptoms and keep him alive for a while. 6 weeks later, Dad diagnosed me with diabetes. And then the dog ran away. That, according to Mom, was the last straw, when the anger and tears and helplessness set in. Then an article in the newspaper announced that federal funding for cancer research was being cut. Senator Ted Kennedy was quoted in the article speaking out against the cuts. But instead of wallowing in their sorrow and self-pity, my mom and dad started to organize. They invited a group of parents whose children had been diagnosed with cancer to our San Rafael home. There's nothing more powerful than angry, self-righteous parents with a cause. They vented and fumed while my dad sat quietly listening. The fathers who had felt helpless were now energized. That night, Dad dreamed about Adlai Stevenson and his eulogy of Eleanor Roosevelt, how she would rather light a candle than curse the darkness. When the parents gathered again, my dad proposed tempering their anger and focusing on what they could do to effect positive change. He shared his dream, and together they decided to name their group the Candlelighters. They were no longer victims and powerless, but rather activists with a cause. They started a petition requesting more funds be directed to cancer research and gathered over 10,000 signatures in just over 2 weeks. Nancy Roach, one of the Candlelighters' parents, wrote to us upon hearing of Dad's death, "Dick was a quiet source of strength and knowledge, pat, outgoing, and vivacious. Together they were a force that brought us all together to fight." This fight led to changes. Our voices heard as we marched to Washington, carrying with us photos of our children and pleas for cancer research funding. We took from them a lesson in how to survive, how to make each day as good as it could be. When Senator Cranston of California learned that Dr. Richard Wolk was spearheading the group, he contacted my dad, inviting him to Washington to speak before the Appropriations Subcommittee of Health, Education, and Welfare. This was 1969, and the Vietnam War was in full swing. In his testimony, my dad compared the war to our own war at home, saying, while 45,000 Americans have died in Vietnam in the past 7 years, and 300,000 have been wounded, the war right here at home against cancer has hit 4 million people and killed 1 million. Those numbers are a lot higher now. Recognized for his self-control under pressure, his articulate and fast-driven testimony, he was invited by Texas Senator Yarborough to help craft what became known as the Conquest of Cancer Act. When his outspoken testimony hit the national news, he was contacted by a group of frustrated parents from Washington, D.C. He encouraged them to use their proximity to the federal seats of power and to organize and lobby members of Congress and the Senate. They did, and soon became powerful advocates for children with cancer. My dad then focused his energy on research, looking for treatments to save his own son. He gave up his family practice in Marin to become an oncologist, a year's fellowship at Mount Zion in San Francisco, and then 2 years in Houston, Texas in the Department of Developmental Therapeutics. Dad was instrumental in Brian's treatment. He kept a running record in his pocket of every blood test, every procedure, every treatment, and every result. And when there was no further treatment available, Mom and Dad were honest with Brian and focused on his quality of life. One of Brian's last wishes was that his savings go toward a sailboat so that his family could have fun. Brian died in Houston on April 11, 1973, outliving his original prognosis by 2 years. Prior to his death, he elected to have one more painful bone marrow
extraction to harvest his leukemia cells for researchers to continue their work. For all we know, his cells are still out there, reproducing and quietly carrying on the fight. Dad was involved in developing the treatment that improved survivability of acute lymphoblastic leukemia from approximately 10% to 50%. Today, childhood ALL is over 80% survivable. In 1973, we moved to Fresno, where Mom went to work creating community, while Dad continued his career in oncology. He helped form the first hospice in Fresno and was one of the only oncologists who treated Medicaid patients because to him, treatment was more important than money. Dad's bedside manner wasn't always the best, but those who understood him knew he worked his hardest to keep them alive and out of the hospital. And when treatment was no longer effective, he did the same that he did for his own son. He was honest with them and helped them focus on their quality of life. In this last year of his life, he shared with me all of his medical concerns and all the research he did on his current conditions. He kept his doctors on their toes, pushing them to find better treatments, to view his condition through a new lens, to think outside the box. He really wanted to live. Shortly after Dad died, a friend of mine wrote to me saying, "I know he was a good man because his family was so willing to do whatever it took to enrich his life and take meticulous care of him." He was a great man. He diagnosed me with diabetes when I was 3 and did his best to keep me healthy while fighting to keep my brother alive. He went back to school to study oncology and researched with the top researcher at MD Anderson in Houston, Texas, to find a cure for leukemia. He spoke in front of the Senate to advocate for research dollars. The parent advocacy and support organization that he and Mom started has since become nationwide. And he saved many lives. When he retired, he redirected his passion and energy to his piano. He went from playing the piano every once in a while to 6 hours a day, sometimes more, composing over 500 songs in less than 10 years. Driven? Yes. Focused? Yes. Critical? Yes. He pushed our family to explore our potential. So yeah, I guess we were going to do everything we could to fight for him. And we did. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote, "Facing death means facing the ultimate question of the meaning of life. If we really want to live, we must have the courage to recognize that life is ultimately very short, and that everything we do counts. When it is the evening of our life, we will hopefully have a chance to look back and say, it was worthwhile because I have really lived. Yeah, that's about right. My dad, Richard Wolk, really lived. I love you, Dad."
Dr. Wolk, Richard. You know, I came here, Richard, to tell you how much I love you. You saved my life. But do you remember the times, and particularly the time we first met? I'd been diagnosed with cancer. I thought maybe I'd have to cancel Christmas and never be here again. You know, I fired 3 doctors. You know, and I said, you know, I'm not going to put up this. This is crazy. But Jesus is going to save me. And so Richard comes up and he says, I started on Richard too. And Richard said, I'm not going to put up with this. He didn't really use those words. And I said, you know, I don't know, Richard. I just don't know. But when he put up with me and he stood firm with me, I said, that's my doctor. That's going to be my doctor. Still, I didn't want to do the chemo. The chemo was something that was against my brain. I said, I don't know. And he tricked me. He shot me full of some chemo without me knowing about it. And I started feeling better. And so I said, hey, chemo, huh? And so, you know, but the most important thing is that we had more than a doctor-patient relationship. We became very, very strong friends. We spent hours on the lake sailing. We spent time with Pat in the garden. It was just fantastic. And the hours we spent, I was thinking the other day, I said, I wish the world could see us and listen to our conversations, especially in this day and age, when you see so much division and conflict. We didn't always see eye to eye. You know, you think, absolutely. But still, we would talk it through. We never lost respect for each other while we had our disagreements, and we always let each other know how we loved each other. And that was the most important thing to me. Since I moved to San Diego, I haven't been in touch that much with them. But, you know, I love you, Richard, and I'm going to see you later.
I want you, Audrey, to go and continue your work. He said, I already know that you're not going to be the person to put in the hospital and take massive treatments. He said, I think I can help you. I'm sure that I can help you. So the 6-month diagnosis, we won't even deal with that because you have a mission. You have a mission to do what God gave you, and that's to change the lives of the people that I work with. He made sure that my husband had the best doctor around at Kaiser. He kept up with my husband. And the important thing is that we all know that we're touched by Dr. Walk and his medical profession, how great he was as a doctor. He did research and he said, I'm going to make it so that you can work and still get chemo. And he did that. He came up with a formula. He had such a trust. He had such a determination. He was so encouraging that when I thought all was lost, he told me, never give up, no matter what. My husband lived 6 years longer than he was supposed to. He kept up with Dr. Walk. Dr. Walk called him to see how he was, to tell him, when your mission is complete, you will go on to your next mission. What a wonderful way to look at death. And I am still here. I was diagnosed in the late 80s, early 90s, and I've been in remission since 96, and I'm still doing the work that Dr. Walk encouraged me to never give up. I will always remember his music. It will always be in my heart. When I get upset, I have a program that's funded by the county, so there's little money always. I would put on one of his CDs, and it would be so encouraging. Every now and then, I would get an email saying, are you still fighting? That was Dr. Walk. So I will always, always remember the encouraging words because he would not allow me to give up. Thank you.
Thank you.
best thing in your life that can happen to you? It happened to me in 1983, age 4, thanks to Abby and Amy. They picked my application to come as an exchange to their family. And wolks really have had lots of foreign exchange students. They have a heart for them. And I was surprised. I wanted to go to Alaska, but then I ended up to wolks. And that's really, really the best thing what happened to me. If you don't count my wife and children, of course. That's something that will happen later. This morning, I was rehearsing the speech in a way because I got a small words from Frederick Palm, whom I met 2 years ago here at the Pat's party, at the 80s party, and we became friends. I knew the existence of Frederick the whole 30 years after my exchange years. I kind of envied that he was the first one at Wolks and listening the stories of what Frederick did. And they saying that don't do that, what he did. Well, not maybe all. But Frederick sent this to me, and I really share the same words what he wrote. And hopefully I can share it without tears. I had my tears at the pool this morning, so maybe not now. Dick, you probably did not know what you signed up for when you agreed to take me in as an exchange student. And I do not think I ever told you really how grateful I am that you did. Being who you were, it was obvious to me right from the start that you were the soothing factor in an expressive family. During that year I came to learn who you were, which I probably not something that I would have been able to express then and there as a 17-year-old, but rather something I came to appreciate thinking back. You were a man of small gestures, who did not raise his voice unless really called upon, a man of great respect, and a man you listened to. You have also made an impression on the next generation Palms. During those brief few days that we came to visit for the great birthday party, you made true friends in Eric, my son. He really enjoyed hanging out in the pool, talking to you, describing you as being so cool. So Dick, thank you ever so much for being my bonus father for 38 years. I will miss you, Frederick. I have to say and admit as well, I miss him. He was more than a father, more than a bonus father. And that really did matter. And I really think that everything has a reason. Me being here now has a reason. I get the strength from all of you to take it back with me at home. Since my mom was diagnosed with cancer a month ago, and I'm sure Dick is helping me, he's helping my mom, and everybody who suffered. So we miss you, Dick. Thank you.
I first met Dr. Wolk at a gathering at a mutual friend's house about 8 years ago. I didn't know at the time that Dr. Wolk would become one of the most important and influential persons in my life. Knowing Dr. Wolk allowed me to experience what it was like to have a father figure in my life. Someone I could openly express what was going on in various stages of my life, and he would offer his advice based on his own personal experiences and supported my every decision. One of the most significant contributions he made in my life wasn't educational, but with my relationship with my current fiance. He had pushed me to pursue a classmate I didn't realize I had mentioned way too many times during our long conversation while rambling on about both of our lives. One of my fondest memories of Dr. Wolk was when I first started dating that classmate. Her name was Liz, by the way. He had encouraged me to bring her over to practice snorkeling in the pool prior to one of our trips. I remembered his face as he hung by the pool with us. It was a proud look, knowing that he helped get us together. The last memories that I have of Dr. Wolk was the weekend before his passing. Liz and I had paid a visit to him and his family and decided to bring our surfboards to practice using the pool. Dr. Wolk was there again, beside the pool with us. He had the same content look that he did the first time when we jumped into the pool with our snorkels. And that's how I will always remember him. Dr. Wolk was more than a friend to me. He was more than a mentor to me. He was my dad. And if there's anything I can say to him today, is thank you for taking the time and effort you put into me and so many others in this room to help us progress in our lives. I will always appreciate and remember all the long talks we had in the garden together. And I was honored to be by your side during your final moments with us. I love you.
One of the most serendipitous days in my life was in April of 2005, and I was attending the annual potluck of the Fresno Folklore Society, and I had just arrived with my offering, a supermarket bought cake that I had done on the way, and I took the price off. It was as I got it. And I entered the kitchen to put this down, and I heard this really neat music emanating from the other room, piano music. I listened a little bit. Gosh, that was great stuff, and it sounded like the sort of thing I love from the Great American Songbook, Gershwin and Porter, like. And I went in and I peeked around the corner, and there sat this very distinguished looking gray-haired gentleman playing the piano. So I listened for a while, and he would go from song to song, and I knew none of them. And I know a lot of those songs, and I thought, well, this is interesting. There's a whole bunch that have passed me by. So when he kind of took a break, I said, boy, that's great music. I said, but I don't know any of them. And he said, well, no, I wrote them. Oh my goodness, and I hit a gold line here. And I said, you wrote them? Well, they're great. Do you have lyrics? Well, no, actually, I'm not really good with lyrics. No, I don't. I said, well, funny you would say that, because I've written a few in my time, and those need lyrics. I mean, they're just crying out for words. So I said, do you think I could have a crack at that? And he said, oh, I'd love it. I said, well, let me tell you, I'm going to retire at the end of the year, and I'll have some more time. And if I could get your name and your phone number, I'll give you a call. So I got his name and his phone number, and I gave him a call. We spent the next 2 years, really, writing music and lyrics. He was amazing. Just amazing. And what he told me was especially fascinating. He'd been musical all his life, as you have heard, but it wasn't an overwhelming part of his life until after he had heart surgery and nearly died. And after that near-death experience, something changed. And I've heard of this sort of thing happening before. All of a sudden, the melodies were just coming at him like bullets. They just came all the time. You referred, I think, to the getting up in the middle of the night and pounding on the piano so he wouldn't lose the melody and find Ted said, how about you get a keyboard and headphones and we can stay together. And he did, and they did, and we would meet every week, sometimes twice a week, and he would always have new material. And they would usually be titled because he would get a sense of the song as it was coming. And we just clicked. He was so gracious and kind and helpful to me. He gave me such confidence in what I was doing. It was one of the dearest experiences of my life. And I think he had a good time too. And Pat would walk through the room once in a while and say, hey, I like that line. She didn't mention the line she didn't like, but I've always been grateful for that. So I wanted to say that I feel very blessed to have met him, to have heard about his amazing character, his life, and I will never, ever forget what we did together. And I have a lot of material that we hadn't finished. Many songs are in his hand, and maybe a few lyrics started here and there. So my son, Matthew Embry, and I are working on putting a CD together, and there's enough for many CDs. And I'm not saying it'll be out tomorrow, but they're certainly on our to-do list, and right at the top, we'd like to have CDs available for anyone who's interested at some point. I'll know how to find you. And we're going to do a song today, one of the ones that Dick and I did together, and this was requested by Pat, this particular song. And it's called, I need to clarify something. If you look at your program, it says, somebody figured this out already, right? It says we're going to do Closing Tim at the Zoo. I just wanted to clarify something there. I don't even know Tim. But I don't think I want to know this one if we got to lock him in the zoo. So this is not the song we wrote, Closing Tim at the Zoo, although you never know. You know, you get inspiration from the oddest places. Closing Tim at the Zoo. That could be a hit that I'm just going to pass right by. The name of the song is Closing Time at the Zoo, which changes the approach just a bit. It's late, it's closing time at the zoo. You'll never finish all you wanted to do. Pandas, the polar bears, and parrot or two. Sad you can't see them all. What's this road.
That was so beautiful. So, as you heard, Dick Wolk was a man of character. He wasn't always charming. He was not a charming, fast-talking man, but rather a thinker, an introvert who cared deeply about people. He was a man whose word could be trusted, who mostly said what he thought, not necessarily what people wanted to hear. Amy and I are both so grateful for our father. He was our provider. That song was really a kicker, wasn't it? And a steady, committed presence through thick and thin. We've heard about the war on cancer, and he was a remarkable oncologist. But part of what made him effective was a broader gift for diagnosis. Wherever we lived, friends and family and former patients from around the country and around the world would call him up when they had a medical mystery that needed solving. He was our Sherlock Holmes of diagnosis. He also loved delivering babies. When he was in family practice, and he used to beg Mom to let him bring home unwanted babies of teen moms. We could have been a very large family. While serving as a naval medical officer in peacetime, he treated a lot of BD. He performed an emergency appendectomy aboard ship in a storm, and he met and married his life partner, Patsy Allen. Let me just say that his choice for a wife was not the easy choice of someone who was brought up in the same values and the same subculture, but a choice that rebelled against the narrower definition of community and humanity and gender roles that he had been raised with. Marrying Patsy, daughter of a union organizer, which I am now, and coming from a line of independent-minded Irish women meant choosing to be challenged, and he was, and he grew throughout his life. Another event that occurred while serving in the Navy at peacetime was radiation exposure. While observing nuclear testing on a small island in the Pacific from the deck of his ship. The sunglasses didn't protect him or the other young men ogling the mushroom cloud. That exposure is what we believe to be the cause of Brian's leukemia, the type 1 diabetes in our family, and other autoimmune conditions, and the autoimmune attack on his vocal cords that left him with little voice after the age of 50. He was what is referred to as an atomic veteran. Going through his things, I found a book on his shelf called When Doing is Easier Than Saying, Living with a Broken Voice. He had to struggle to be heard. And he hated sounding like Daffy Duck. He used to say that. But he made the most of it, and I believe his passion for cooking and for music was related to his disability. These were ways that he could express himself and be understood without a struggle. Inspired by the love of Italian culture and cuisine, he became a talented and generous chef and enjoyed serving up delicious food and a bottle of wine at small family dinners with a few friends. After dinner, there were frequently games, cranium Kudoo with little kids, apples to apples, Scrabble, and more. These were this was unplugged quality time together, and it was joyful. He was a lover of games, and one of the games he loved best was bocce ball, played in the flattest part of the backyard. He was good at it. In July, he played his last game. Wearing the oxygen concentrator and seeming so fragile, I was afraid he wouldn't be able to lift the heavy balls. He threw a perfect game. I did not have a chance. After Brian died, Dad always missed having a son. He was completely outnumbered by extroverted women. For a while, even the dog and the cat were female. Through hosting foreign exchange students and keeping his heart open, several lucky young men, needing father figures, found him, and he gave them his attention and support. These past 8 years, while Amy and I have been raising grandchildren in other cities, the young man closest to his heart has been Adam Chan, a much-loved surrogate son. Adam's interest in speech disorders and speech therapy was the beginning of a beautiful connection that resulted in our father's personal community expanding exponentially once he got to know and love Adam's 9 siblings and mother and fiancé Liz. Two of the happiest occasions I shared with him in the past couple of years were at Chan family gatherings, the triple baptism and the quadruple baby birthday party. You will remember that my father always loved babies, and after so many years of battling cancer with very sick people, it was joyous that in his final years, on special occasions, he should be surrounded by babies and young mothers. I like to say my father died and we inherited the Chan family. We won't have them all speak because it would take all night. But we would like to ask the Chan family to stand. Dad's life tells us to lead productive lives, to stick by our families even when it's hard, to adapt to disabilities by growing in new directions, and to always open our hearts and give of ourselves to the next generations. The ripples of his good deeds will be felt for a long, long time, and we will miss him. So if he's not saying anything, he's just my crutch here. I wrote something for my grandpa. Me and him used to be really close when I was young. We were both early risers, so I would go to his bed, and sometimes I'd bring him coffee, and we would spend the early hours together before everyone woke up. And as I got older, things got complicated. I didn't think he approved of me. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if he could accept me or be proud of me for what I wanted to do with my life. And his last words to me were probably the best thing he could have possibly said. He hugged me and he looked me straight in the eyes and he said, "This time, I'm not going to tell you what to do," because he always used to tell me to go to college to figure out a path, and I always just wanted to be an artist. He said, "I'm not going to tell you what to do, just do." And since then, I've started my own business. But this is what I wrote for him. I was sitting on his bed, and
words have just been coming to me since he's died so much, and I feel like he gave me that. I feel like he gave me that. The empty catacombs of a scattered home. Thoughts flying through my dome. I want to talk to you, but it's no longer simple as picking up the phone. When I was a kid, you were my favorite. Now I'm full grown. You told me to just do. So now I'm finding a voice of my own. This room used to be yours. Now it's just empty drawers and clean floors. Mind spatters, thoughts shattered, but trying to open doors. Your death came, the same as it does for everyone. Your life was a rising firework, but you hit that age and now it's done. I swear to you one day, I'm going to reach the sun. I took those words to heart. Life's coming, I won't run. I love you, Grandpa. Rest in peace.
We'd like to share with you some things that we loved about Dad and ways we can remember him in our own lives.
Be honest to a fault and believe in the intentions of others, even at the risk of appearing gullible.
Make a habit of family dinners. Yes, where everyone actually sits down around a table and raises a glass or gives a prayer of thankfulness before digging in.
Make music part of your life and never stop until your last day.
Learn to sail or find another way of communing with nature.
Practice forgiveness, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard.
Stretch and yawn loudly at the opening of each new day.
Enjoy live performances. Don't be too cool to enjoy musical theater. Eat black licorice or your own favorite treat until your doctor tells you not to. That's taken on me occasionally.
Correspond with friends around the world, travel widely, and attempt to learn a foreign language when you're over 50.
Use your humor through the indignities of old age.
Read and play board games with your family. Try bocce ball.
When your children are involved in their own lives and somewhat unreceptive to your wisdom, find other young people needing mentoring.
Keep rituals like carving pumpkins going, even when there's no kids around.
Strive to take responsibility for your own part in whatever messy situation we are resenting.
Go above and beyond to help others, even if your bedside manner is lacking.
If your mobility is impaired, arrive at the zoo at opening time to get one of the electric scooters, then make your grown daughter chase you around the zoo.
Develop culinary schools and take pleasure in delighting others' palates and your own.
Pursue knowledge, use the scientific method, and test your hypotheses.
Seek to reconcile spiritual and scientific perspectives.
When your spouse is out of town, go to the animal shelter and bring home an adorable mutt. Give them a name that honors your spouse's family or ethnicity.
When you are not in public, sneeze so loudly that the windows shake.
Take time to feed the giraffes.